health and fitness, because again, I think a lot of people, there's so much information out there, it can be crazy confusing, all right? Where do we focus our time? Where do we focus our attention? And a lot of the information as well is quite conflicting. You know, one week, one thing will be the popular thing to do. The next week, it's going to be another thing. And I've been doing this for a while, and already you see like things have repeating themselves over and over again. It's like, you know, if you go back to, I don't know, maybe about 20 years ago, Atkins came out, if we're thinking about diets. So the Atkins diet was all, you know, high protein and low carbs and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, that was all working and all in vogue. And then that went out of fashion. And now, like, paleo diet came into fashion. Again, maybe that's about 10 years ago. High protein, low in carbs. And now there's a carnivore diet. Just eat meat, nothing else. All right? And then that's going to go out of fashion. So these things come in and out. And the exact same with any form of training, whether it's resistance training or cardio, okay? So again, this idea of informed decisions. You know this question, it's like, when is the best time to plant a tree?
20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, right? And the second best time to plant the tree is now. Even though I've been asking everybody, where do I plant me Dickinson fern tree? I don't want it to die on me. Yeah, I don't want it to die on me, so I'm thinking about it. But again, so the point that I'm trying to get at here is no matter where you're at on your fitness journey, we can make alterations or change things at any point in time, okay? So don't be thinking, oh, listen, what's the point in doing X, Y, and Z, or it's too late to start anything. We spoke about this before. This lad on the right here, he's one of my online clients. No, he's not. I'm only messing. But this idea, okay, I think within the West, and especially like within our society, we have this idea of like, hey, aging equals a reduction in functional capacity. And in some ways, like, I mean, if you were going to the Olympics at 25, there is going to be a reduction at 65 and 75 and 85. But it doesn't have to be to the level of, you know, what a lot of people might think of this person on the right. Somebody's X, Y age, it's like, oh, that means they can't do X, Y, and Z. And I think a lot of the reasons behind this, and again, it's broad, but a lot of people aren't using their body. And because you're not using your body in a certain way, you lose those capacities or you lose those functions. So I think one thing for me as we move through this as well is this idea of capacity, all right? Trying to build or expand our capacities in different areas, all right? I know I touched on this before, people, but look, ultimately our objective, whether you are Jess's age, 20, 21 or 22, whether you're my age, 40, or we're moving on a little bit from there, we want to get more living. Yeah, a little bit. We want to get more living out of life, okay? Now, more living out of life means very, very different things to different people. And again, for some people, that might be, you know, running up a mountain. For some people, that might be carrying in your own shopping bags. For some people, that might be coming to the gym, all right? So it's quite different. But again, going back to the idea of capacities and that idea of planting a tree, if we take Jess as an example because she's here, if she builds a certain amount of fitness and strength and robustness in her body, assuming nothing crazy happens, hopefully, all right? And again, we can't account for everything, all right? But assuming nothing crazy happens, she's going to have greater capacity in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years or 50 years, okay? So with this graph here, you kind of see, hey, listen, in terms of as we age, and if you were to take muscle strength, probably flexibility and fitness, everything increases to a point, all right? And that kind of peak, if you were thinking like going back to an athlete, that peak might be mid-20s, all right? And then things start to slowly come down from there. And what we want to do within anything that we're doing in the gym is just expand the gap between, let's say, the light blue line and the dark blue line. So the light blue line, assuming somebody is trying to keep active, they're keeping fit, they're keeping healthy, whatever that means to them. And then the dark blue line is somebody who maybe hasn't done a lot of physical activity, all right? So if we pass down into this threshold of low physical performance, at a point in time, we're going to get to a point where it's like, hey, listen, I can't look after myself anymore, all right? Then the kids are like, I'm not bleeding wiping your arse for you. Off you go, okay? But it was really nice to you for 50 years. Yeah. And here's the thing, all right? This is going to come back up later. Two things that we're going to speak about and try and get a bit of an understanding of. One, and we spoke about this previously, is like VO2 max. and your VO2 max is, I suppose, how much oxygen your body can use for any given activity. And there's going to be something equivalent to that, which is called METs. So METs are metabolic equivalents. Basically, it's the energy we use to do any particular task: walking, running, sprinting, carrying a bag of shopping. So below 6 METs, or a VO2 max of approximately 20, you would not be able to live independently on your own. So when we look at our VO2 max, you know, let's say for anybody who's got it tested, wherever that is, unless we do something about it, you know, you could improve it. But for most of us, it's going to start to dip down a little bit. And if that gets below a certain point, from a cardio perspective, we're not going to be able to walk up the stairs, for example. If it got below a certain point from a strength level, we wouldn't be able to get up and down out of a chair, all right? Now again, the objective here is not to try and put scare tactics on anybody. It's like, you have to stay in the gym forever, right? That's not what it's about. But it is, I suppose, to kind of get people thinking, because if I was being really realistic with a lot of people, when a lot of people first come to the door of the gym, how unfit they might be, they don't really understand it, because their average day-to-day activities don't require a lot of fitness. So if you work in an office and you get up and you go down, you sit in a nice comfy chair and you have a cup of coffee and you go into a nice comfy car, you drive to work and you're in a nice comfortable office, maybe you're carrying a laptop, maybe you're not. And then usually what happens is there's a health and image focusing event. Something happens and it's like you fall, or you go to pick something up, or go to pick up a grandkid. It's like, oh shit, that was hard. And there's that kind of realization. It's like, ooh, that's probably harder than what it should be. And then somebody might turn around and go, hey, listen, I might want to do something about this. But then when they get to the gym and you kind of ask them to do a few things, like somebody might be on a bike and like a minute and a half in and their legs are on fire. It's like, whoa. Now look, that's not you guys, because you're training, you're exercising. But imagine a situation where you couldn't cycle on the bike for 60 seconds without your legs feeling like, oh my God, these are on fire. And then if we were to try and translate that back into the real world of like walking up the stairs, walking up a hill, or any of those type of things. So again, our objective, we're all going to decline. There's nothing wrong with that. It's natural. But we want to try and increase this gap between these two lines as much as possible. And there is a huge amount that we can do in that space. Any questions so far, guys? No? Have I frightened the crap out of everybody? It's like, oh, damn it. This is the worst Sunday ever. Don't worry. At the end, we've got all the solutions. It gets way, way better. It's like one of those slides. Woof, and then we'll go off, all right? So what I want to talk about is this concept of a marginal decade, all right? And kind of get people to think about it. So Dr. Peter Attia was, I think, the one to coin this phrase. And your marginal decade is the kind of last 10 years of your life. And to ask yourself the question of what would you like to be able to do within those last 10 years of your life, all right? Now, again, that can be a tricky thing, because sometimes when you come into the gym, it's like, you know, the trainer might go, here, what's your goals? And you're like, fuck, I don't have any goals. I don't know what I want to do. How strong do you want to be? I don't know how strong. How fit do you want to? Stop asking me questions, all right? But if we turn around and go, if we bring it out into the real world and ask the question of like, what would you like to be able to do in the real world in 10 or 20 or 30 or 40, or maybe for Jess, it's 50 years, all right? I suppose if you're thinking statistically for an Irish man, I think it's 82.6. And for an Irish woman, it is 83 or 84 years, all right? Now again, we have people living to their 90s, into the hundreds, but statistically, that's kind of where it is. Now, if you're in this gym and you're lifting weights, you're going to be on the good end of that, all right? But to ask yourself, all right, what do I want to be able to do? So, you know, somebody might turn around and go, I like traveling, I like going on holidays, right, Paul? We were talking, all right? You were doing the Camino and things like that, all right? Brilliant. So look, there's going to be physical capacities that are necessary to do that, from a strength perspective, from a cardio perspective. Like when you get onto a plane, do you want to be able to put the bags into the upper locker? Well, that's going to require strength, as in, hey, I'm pressing dumbbells over my head. All right, it's going to require shoulder mobility. See these circly things that we be doing? Because if you go and your arm stops there, well, you can't put that overhead. You're looking around. You throw that up for me, all right? If you think I grab 2 weights and I'm walking up and down the gym with them, that might translate to carrying your bags in the airport, or carrying water cans down your garden, because it's a long garden. You don't want to keep going up and down. All right? So you kind of get where we're going with that, all right? So this idea of a marginal decade. And then the next thing that we would want to do, and again, I think for you guys here, or if there's any of the rest of the gym watching this, it would be a good exercise to actually sit down and think about. It's like, what do I want? Because sometimes it can be hard to sink your teeth into the here and the now. But if you think about later on, what do you want? Well, then that's going to require certain qualities now. So if Jess was to turn around and say, I want to be that woman who's carrying my own shopping and putting, the bag up over her head on the plane, and that bag weighs 10 kilos. Well, at 22 years old, what should she be able to do, considering there's going to be a drop-off? So if she can't lift multiples of 10 kilos over her head now, 2 tens, let's say, so that's 20 kilos, well, she's not going to be able to lift it in 40 years' time. Does that make sense?
But is there so that, say, you can lift 50 now, but I'm 60, what should I be?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. So if somebody was in their 60s, let's say you said to yourself, in my 80s, I want to be able to put that bag overhead, which is 10 kilos. Well, we kind of lose strength at about 3 to 8% every decade. All right, so you could start to work back from there and go, hey, listen, if I was in my 60s and I want to put, that's 5 in each hand, maybe I need to be aiming for 7.5 to 10 kilos to be able to press that. Maybe Jess needs to be aiming 15 kilos to be able to press it overhead. Does that make sense? Because that's given enough capacity, enough buffer zone that there will be slight deteriorations. Now, the other thing about that is, if somebody comes into the gym and they've never been in the gym before and they come in at 60 and they're training for a year or 2 years or 3 years, they can build huge strength levels. But the thing is, if they can, sometimes, let's say, if somebody comes into the gym at 80 and we look at them and go, Jesus, such and such is getting way stronger. My mind goes, holy hell, what would happen if he had been here 20 years ago? Well, it would have been a shirt factory, but other than that, other than that, they would have got way more out of it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's this idea of marginal decade. And again, this is where that's going to be different for different people. Not everybody's going to want to do the Camino. That's a fairly big chunky thing. Some people, maybe it's smaller than that. But whatever it is thinking there is going to be marginal drop-offs. So I need more capacity now at this age. We were only talking about this as the coaching team. And I think we might have spoke about it from a mobility perspective. There's a get-up test where you cross your legs over, drop to the floor and get back up again. All right, now if you can't do that, well, this is the question. A year ago, I had no problem doing it. Now it's a bit my hips are a little bit at me. So I've lost, because I've done so much cardio, I've lost mobility within my hips over the last period of time. So if I didn't fix that afterwards, well, that's only going to get worse. Dean turned 40 as well. I was like, off you go. Dean was like, whoa! He couldn't get up. All right. So if you said to Jess, do that, poof, up off the ground. So it's going to require 2 things. It's going to require strength and it's going to require mobility. All of these things we start to lose as we age. Now, that particular get-up test, it's called the Brazilian get-up test. They have looked at that and done research on it. And depending on how many points of contact you have to touch to get up off the ground will dictate how fit and healthy somebody is and then when they die. All right, statistically. It doesn't matter on a one-to-one case, but statistically. Does that make sense? So when the next thing, all right, is this idea of backcasting. So if you understand what the marginal decade is, so what I done is I said, ChatGPT, what will Jay look like when he's 70? And that's the image again, me back. I don't know. It wasn't me. It was the computer. Computer gave it to me.
Water,
yeah,
shorts.
Exactly. Yeah. Looking handsome. All right. But this idea of backcasting. So if we know the end result that we're looking for, we can start to move back from there. Because sometimes in terms of forecasting, here I am now and I'm trying to push forward. It can be a kind of hard thing to figure out. So, and this kind of touches back to maybe some of the questions we had here. So how backcasting works, we start off with define what is the vision that I'm looking for? What's the outcome? What do I want to be able to do with my body from a fitness and a health perspective? And we try and clearly articulate what that is. Then we assess our current state. So it's like, if I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z later on, what can I do today? Okay. Then we identify the gap. So there's going to be a distance between those two things. And then we work backwards and we think about, right, a step-by-step plan on how to close that gap down. And that ultimately, that's a training plan. And your training plan is going to have 4 components, or should have 4 components. And I'll speak about those now in a second. And then we implement and we adjust to get us towards that goal, all right? So if we were thinking about this, I suppose in some ways, if people just show up to the gym, right, and they go through their workouts and they're here 3 or 4 days a week or twice a week and they're consistent, great things will happen. But if somebody actually thought about, no, what do I want? And told the coach, this is what I want, and turned up and like trained for that thing, the result they would get would be significantly different. Does that make sense? So it's, again, some people, they don't want to think that much about it. It's just, listen, I'm giving my health and fitness over to you, you deal with it. But that's a little bit like, going to a financial advisor and going, here's all my hard-earned money. Take that, do whatever you want with it. Whoa, nobody does that with their money. But at like day 0 or day whatever, the final day, nobody's going to be concerned about the money they have or they don't have. But it's like, if your back is in bits or your knee is in bits or you can't get out of a chair, you can't get out of a bed, that's going to be significant. And again, I suppose just some of that is our society probably doesn't value that as much, even though we all say, oh yeah, my health is my wealth and all that. And it's like, when it comes to it, it's like, oh, we're not really putting that attention on it. Any questions on the marginal decade or the backcasting concept? Don't worry now, it's all getting good after this because everybody's a bit like, ah.
In terms of, identifying the vision and then making your plan, the timeline, like what would be, I suppose, a guideline, so to speak, saying, right, this is the vision, what's realistic to get this?
So the concept would be this, it's like if you start with the marginal decade, and you think about, I suppose, the closer you get to the marginal decade, the easier this task might be. For you, it's just like, holy shit, that's ages away, it's grand. All right, but you think about, right, what would I want to be able to do? So if you thought to yourself, hey, what things are fun, like slacklining, for example. It's like, it mightn't be that thing, but walking up a mountain, what things do you want to be able to do? Do you want to be independent and able to carry your own shopping bags? That's what I need to be able to do all this time in the future. Now I start to come back decade by decade and think to myself, what capacities do I need? Does that make sense? Because if you said like, hey, I want to be able to do the Camino, but then you just went and spent the next 50 years lifting weights and done no cardio, you mightn't be able to do the Camino. You might be strong, you can carry your own bags, but you can't do the Camino. Or if you've spent all your time hammering weights and running and your joints are knackered, all right, or in bits, well then, hey, listen, you're not going to be able to do those things because you'll need a shoulder replacement, a knee replacement, whatever the case may be. And again, some of these things are genetic and there's nothing we can do about it, but there is a lot that we do have control over in terms of the inputs that we have. Does that make sense? Cool. Anything else, guys? No? All right. So look, the next thing, touching on this idea of the 4 quadrants of fitness, the way I would kind of think about any fitness quality, so that could be like strength, how much weight you can move. It could be cardiovascular fitness, how long you can keep your body moving for. Whatever it is, it's a capacity, okay? So if I was to say each of these jars represents any fitness capacity, which jar would you want? Yeah, the bigger one, all right? So I just want you to kind of keep that in mind. Within reason, the more strength you have, the better it's going to be. The more mobility you have, the better it's going to be. The more fitness you have, the better it's going to be, within reason. Then we can get into, well, I only have 3 hours to train. Now, all right, there's going to be limitations on how much of those things we can chase after. Does that make sense? I've only so much time to invest in it, or I've only so much energy to recover from my training. Because if you're doing more, well, energy has to come from somewhere. So again, it's thinking about what's right for you as an individual. Does that make sense? So like, the amount of training I'm doing at the moment comes at a big cost to the rest of my life. Like work is definitely, I'm not as much on point. Here, you do that, will you? Here, you do that, will you? It's like, I'm not the one jumping in doing it. Or it's like, I'm driving home after work. It's like, I maybe should go and see my parents, but I'm going to the gym. Do you know type way? So it is taken away from other things. But again, that's only a short-term thing. So I'm telling Eilish anyway. Make sure you put that up there. She's like, you don't be looking at any more races. So first, all right, if we want to think, look, when we say the word fitness, because people say, I want to be fit, ultimately fitness is your ability to do a task. All right, so that would be the definition of fitness. And there's various different types of tasks we can do. So we need a certain element of specificity. The other thing I'd just say is like, most people would do well if we kind of taught on a general basis, all right? It's like if we were generally strong, generally fit across a spectrum of different types of strengths and different type of fitness, it would serve us much better than if we were just focusing in on the one thing. So for example, if you came to the gym and you spent 3 hours bench pressing or 3 hours doing like core work, Pilates, bloody hell, all right, it's probably not going to benefit you as much as if you were generally fit across a lot of different qualities, okay? So when it comes to the things that are important, I kind of break them down into these areas. So in no particular order, it's going to be strength and hypertrophy, it's going to be mobility, it's going to be cardiovascular, and then it's going to be expression, play, and fun. So you'll see that when we're training, if it's one day, like, so if you were to look at your program, some people it's just all gobbledygook. I'm just doing things, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you think about the way it's structured, there's mobility stuff there that we're trying to keep or add some element of mobility to the session. There's going to be some form of lifting where it's like, hey, you are forcing your body to try and get stronger by lifting a weight. And then for most people, there's going to be something which elevates your heart rate, all in the one training session, okay? Then if you look across the timetable of the gym, there's obviously your lifting focus sessions, there's going to be mobility specific sessions, and then there's going to be cardiovascular specific sessions where we're taking one of those qualities and putting way more energy into it, okay? Because again, you could do 5 minutes of like mobility at the beginning of your workout, or you could come and do 1 like hour of mobility. That 1 hour might be better than trying to do 5 minutes, 3 days a week. And again, it's for each person to just say, if they're coming to the gym 3 days a week, should all of it be lifting? Should half of it be lifting? Should some of these other qualities be looked at? And again, that's for each person to decide upon. But this idea of expression, play, and fun, ultimately, if we think about this concept of getting more living out of life, the only reason that we're lifting the weights, the only reason we're doing the mobility, the only reason we're doing the cardio is that each person can get what they want out of life in terms of their body. So again, in this scenario here, look, the girls were all training in the gym. Hey, let's go and do this thing. The thing didn't matter. The journey in terms of the training to get them there was more important than the execution or the expression of that fitness, even though that was quite cool. Walking a mountain, doing the Camino, whatever the case may be. Does that make sense? And again, I was shouting at them, listen, bloody run faster the next time you're winning. They didn't believe me. I was like, fucking run faster. They could have won that. I think they were like 2 seconds. Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 seconds from winning. Do you know what I mean? Which is crazy, considering they'd never done it before. Do you know what I mean? Well, Julie's a little bit competitive. Yeah, it's like they've been running around going, I hope Julie doesn't see me run slow. All right. So when we think about strength, this person hasn't done any training in these images, okay? So on the left, we've got more muscle. On the right, with age, we've got less muscle. So we've got the bone, then this kind of darker matter is muscle, and then the lighter stuff is fat. What do you notice the difference between left and right? Yeah, there's significantly less muscle on the right side. And here's the thing why is that important then? Imagine a situation where somebody falls and they can't get up off the ground, all right? Or if somebody trips, they flick their ankle and they go to fall, if they can't poof and catch themselves, they're going to hit the ground. Do you know the type of way? I actually seen that yesterday. I was driving home, going up through Monkstown, and I just caught in the side of my eye, this man was going up, and the curb was quite high. Do you know it's one of those ones that the buses go into? So he was at the bus stop, and he just caught it, down he went. Now, he was able enough to jump up and kind of sort himself out. He didn't even need anybody to get out with him, but that could have gone quite differently there. And the other thing is, it's like, it could be as simple as, listen, can we get up and down out of a chair? Because I suppose there's a feedback loop. The less we move, the less we're going to be able to move. So if we haven't got the muscle and the strength to lift us up and down, and we're not talking bodybuilder muscle here, and I think that can be a disconnect when people say, oh, muscle, or women might turn around and go, I don't want to get too bulky. And it's like, you've got every dude who ever lived wants to get bigger muscles in the gym, and most don't have them. They're down the gym 6 days a week, and nobody ever woke up, I just got too big, all right? In all the time that I've trained here, so we're talking like 12 years of having this gym, I think there was 2 women where you go, holy shit, she's a lot of muscle. 2. But they liked it, so they were all right. But like, it never happened outside of that, you know what I mean? So I want to just touch on this quickly, right? And I kind of lied, geez, there is a bit more negative stuff here. But we'll all come good, so don't worry. So look at falls among all the adults is the leading cause of injury-related hospitalization. So falls are the biggest one, right? Fractures due to falls. So 95% of hip fractures are due to a fall. Women are twice as likely to experience a hip fracture than men. Why do we think that might be? Yeah, osteoporosis, right? So, and here's the thing, right? We had yoga here last week. Oh, Jesus, there was 57 women out there and 2 men, right? We have mobility classes. It's 90% women. Then the women are all outside and like they walk in, right? A woman could have a child that weighs like 30 kilos and they'd be carrying them around duns. Ew. In the gym, they're going down picking up 2 kilo weights. It's like, Mary, come on. You're not going to explode with muscles. You've just carried a child that's 30 kilos and now you're lifting 2. But I don't when it comes to, let's say, the hips, okay? So when we look at osteoporosis, there's genetic component. We can't do anything about that. There's going to be a nutrition component, and again, vitamin D, calcium, that type of stuff. So we do have a little bit of an impact on that. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the damage for anybody with osteoporosis happens early in life. So it happens in your formative years, like teenage years. So if there wasn't a lot of exercise and the nutrition was poor, we're not going to lay down as much bone tissue. So now we're starting off into adulthood with less, and then that starts to deteriorate over time. So if you start with less, you're going to finish with less, and then that's where we can start having issues. But all that being said, we can impact it by resistance training. So when we think about your skeleton, there needs to be load placed through the skeleton. So there can be axial load, as in like I'm running and I'm putting load straight through the axis. But more importantly, there needs to be shear force. So if you imagine a bone, there's going to be tendons connected to the bone. The muscles pull on those tendons and it creates a shear force, which is a force like this. So 2 opposing forces. That shearing is what causes the bone to remodel and lay down more dense tissue. Now, the most important thing to think about there is, imagine, what do you think the load needs to be in order to force your bone to bend? I'm not talking bend like a banana or anything like that, but even microscopically bend. What load do you think would need to be?
Well, would it differ from male to female?
Well, it might differ from male to female, but like a bone is a bone, whether it's a man's bone or a female bone, within reason. Gravity is gravity. So I don't know the exact number, but significant. Does that make sense? So like 2 kilos won't cut it. So, sometimes I'm talking to people on the phone, they're like, yeah, I'm 61 and osteoporosis, my mother had it and da-da-da-da-da. Don't know about the gym, I've got weights at home. What weight are the 2 kilos? It's a bag of sugar.
Is it a weight that's a challenge?
A challenge, exactly, 100%. So this is where, and when like there's a female researcher in Australia who's doing amazing work in this area, and she has a program where they bring people in and deadlift. So deadlift would be a great exercise for the simple reason that it's one of the movements that we can add the most load to. Now again, you don't have to be a power lifter. It has to be safe. So it could take somebody a year to get to from, hey, I'm lifting the pink kettlebell to I'm lifting 60 kilos. And there's nothing wrong with that. As long as we're on a trajectory where we know that we have to be increasing the load from a skeletal benefit standpoint. Does that make sense? Any questions on that?
So sometimes you hear like you should lift your 2/3 of your body weight, maybe deadlift or 1.5 times.
Yeah.
I don't know, what is there like kind of ended per decade in a way as well?
Yeah, so if you were looking at the research that lady done in Australia, I'd have to get her name. It slipped me at the moment. She had women in the gym and they were deadlifting. Now these are women in their 60s and above, right? They're deadlifting between 60 and 100 kilos. All right? But again, you know, that's not huge. It might seem like a lot, but it's not. Because I was in the gym the other day and a woman was out there deadlifting, right? And, you know, she's cautious, and rightly so. Because, again, I think a lot of times when people come to the gym, they've had bad experiences or there might be injuries. So it's not about just loading weights on there and like, everybody's lifting loads of weight. But she was lifting 40 kilos. And I said to one of the coaches, go and tell her to put 2 more 10s on. So she put 2 more 10s on, lifted it, no problem. So now she's lifting 60 kilos. It's a month later and she's still lifting 60 kilos for the exact same reps. So in her mind, she was like, oh, this is great. But she's not challenging her body as much as what she could do. Does that make sense? And again, we're not looking to just try and load the body up carelessly. It has to be safe. But she could lift 80 kilos. I'll tell you a quick story, and I think I told you this before. I was in the gym before. We had 3 women in deadlifting. It was one Saturday. It was only the 4 of us. They were like, oh, can we lift a bit more? I was like, oh, if you want. So all of a sudden, there was this girl, can't remember her name. There was a girl then who was a GA player. Can't remember her name. And then there was this woman, Cara, and I'll never forget this woman's name. Okay? So, you know, they off to go 40 kilos, 50 kilos, 60 kilos. I got to 65, your woman taps out. So now we're into Cara and the GA player. 70, 80, the GA player. Whoa, that's getting heavy. Cara, Cara, keep going. 80, 90, 100. Fucking hell, Cara, keep going. 110, 120. She ended up lifting 150 kilos. What? 150 kilos. This is a woman that was like in her 40s, right? Now, here's the thing. I was like, fucking hell. In the gym, she was lifting 40 kilos. And I was saying to her, maybe, how's that feel, Cara? Oh, yeah, that's heavy. But what she felt was heavy and what heavy was for her body were colossally different. Do you know what I mean? So I think the most important thing would be for people to obviously feel safe. We don't want, like, injury is, because if you injure yourself in any way, shape or form, you go backwards. And it doesn't have to be a deadlift. Like, you could go out and push the sled. All right, so it's like, my back isn't great. We could go out and put 100 kilos on the sled and push it down the gym. Your body doesn't know that you deadlift or you push the sled. It just knows there's a force being placed on it. There's nothing inside. You ever see that inside out? There's not they're deadlifting inside the body. It's just forces being placed on bones. So within everybody in the gym, there's going to be exercises that we could pick that was right, that's your one. You push that. And everything else is a little bit more tame because of my shoulder, because of my wrist, or whatever the case may be. Listen, 1 in 5 people with a hip fracture, this is over the age of 60, will die within a year of the fracture. 1 in 5 will die. Now, that would just make you go, and even for me, when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, wow. And here's the thing, they're not dying from the fall per se, but if you break your hip or fracture your hip and you can't walk, well, now you're in bed. If you're in bed, and we've seen those images of the muscle, if you're not loading your bones, you're going to lose your muscle really, really fast. And when you lose muscle and you catch pneumonia, catch COVID, any virus that's gone around the hospital, your body's ability to fight that virus is way, way down. So my sister was an ICU nurse for years, and one of the first things they do when somebody comes in, they look at the chart and it's like, is this person active? If they're active, they're like, right, we've got a fighting chance. If they're not active, it's like, they're going to be an organ donor. And now that's a bit harsh, but that's the reality of what they're facing, right? The other thing then, 50% of hip fracture patients never regain their previous mobility. So that's pretty scary, isn't it? Like, you know, so all of this stuff, we cannot prevent ourselves from...
Especially when one of them's dead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whoosh! Okay, again, risk of death, again, some more great news. Risk of death is 5 to 8 times higher in the first 3 months post-fracture. Repeated falls increase the risk of long-term disability. So if somebody falls, the chances of them falling again. So Eilish's mum, her partner, Pat, has dementia at the moment. And he was at home and he fell down the stairs. So he fell down the stairs and he broke his ankle. Bring him to hospital. He's in hospital. He forgot that he broke his ankle because he has dementia. And he went and jumped out of the bed And when he hit the ground, his ankle didn't take him, and he fell and he broke his arm. You're like, oh my God. It was like one of these fucking statistics is coming to life. But you can see how simply, a fall from the stairs led to a fall from the arm. Now, listen, this lad is made of bloody titanium or something because he's still rocking. He's back home and he's good. But a lot of people wouldn't be, When we're thinking about preventative measures, and again, some of these things we can't prevent, a lot of it we can. Or maybe the wrong word is prevent, but mitigate against. Strength training, balance work, bone health management in terms of calcium, vitamin D, weight bearing exercise. Another thing is, like, a lot of people that might be a bit older might go, listen, I'll go and I'll swim. Swimming is useless for this because you're in a buoyant substance. You're taking gravity away. So actually it's worse than walking. Do you know what I mean? Now, it has benefits cardio, so I'm not saying swimming is useless, but from a bone density perspective, it's not doing anything. You might as well just be walking around, all right? And even walking around, you're not placing enough load on the body.
What about running?
Running would be better than walking. But they've also looked at it, and what they've found is that with runners, they'll build specific density to that running. But not like, so they'd be kind of insulated in a small scope, but not as much as if you were lifting and running together. Does that make sense? So the more varied your activity, the better that would be. Any questions so far, guys? No? So that's the strength quadrant. I hope the takeaway there is, I want to get stronger, whatever that means for each individual. Yeah, get stronger or die trying. That's got to be my motto. The next one is mobility. And look, obviously, the way I would look at mobility would be, it's how much space our joints have to move in. And then the combination of the space in the joint creates global movements, whether that be a squat. And ultimately what mobility does is it gives us more options. Again, go back to that idea of falling. If I go to fall and I can go whoop and catch myself, I mightn't hit the ground. There was a woman that came into us in the gym, or one of the clients actually brought her in. It was our auntie, and she's 82, and she keeps tripping. And the reason why she's tripping, she can't lift her leg. All right. So there's something, I haven't done an assessment yet, but there's either a mobility or strength issue in our ankle, because when we lift our foot, we've got to lift our toes. And if we're not lifting our toes, we're going to catch. Or there's a mobility issue in the hip or a strength issue in the hip that I can't lift my leg high enough to catch. So two very simple things. It could be ankle mobility or hip mobility, and or strength could be the only difference that person needs to be able to walk. And again, if you think about youth, people who are youthful, like kids, they're always leaving the earth. It's like jumping, rah, 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 rah. It's like if you say to some people, when's the last time you left the earth? Oh, I was on holidays. No, when's the last time you jumped off the ground? Do you know what I mean? And if you don't do it, what happens? You lose it, okay? Chris, we're going to have jumps in your program now next week.
Push up. Is that another big fad? Like that? Is that what you're getting at?
So I think with the trampoline, and there's probably great cardiovascular benefits from that. It's not necessarily the same because look, the springs bounce back at you. It's not necessarily the same as like being able to jump off the ground, all right? So that kind of point of like youthfulness is like a baby be jumping and blah, 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 blah. And it's, all mammals do it, all right? Even dolphins jump up out of the water. It's an excitement reflex, all right? And if you think about as somebody ages, the feet aren't even leaving the ground. So that idea of being able to leave the earth, okay, is going to come down to mobility and strength together. So when we're looking at cardiovascular, now we're transitioning, we've touched on strength, we've touched on the mobility piece, it's important. Now we're going to touch into the cardio piece of the puzzle. So when we're looking at the World Health Organization and the American Heart Foundation, this is the recommendations. So at least 150 to 300 minutes per week of moderate activity or 75 minutes of vigorous activity. So moderate activity would be 3 to 5.9 METs specifically, and that would be a slow to a brisk walk, And again, that would be slightly different for different people. But thinking not a walk with a cappuccino and talking to the girls, it's like you're shifting here, we're walking. Does that make sense? All right. If we're thinking vigorous activity, it's above 6 METs. So that would be we're getting into a jog. Now, in an ideal scenario, we would have a combination of both spread throughout the week. So we're not just walking, we're not just doing vigorous stuff, you're spreading it between the two, okay? And then 2 resistance training sessions per week. So that would be their recommendation. So now you might start thinking to yourself, if I've only got X amount of time to train or to put into my health and fitness, am I going to start dishing out those units of time or units of energy ever so slightly differently? Does that make sense? One thing I will say as well, if there's a form of cardio that somebody doesn't like, don't do it. Just put more energy into the other stuff. So there's no one thing is the best. We need a broad spectrum of different things. Any questions on this so far, guys? Does the amount of activity surprise anybody? Yeah. Now again, some people will get that. Like, here's the thing what caught a lot of people off guard, I know from even being in the gym. Mary comes to the gym 3 days a week, everything is great. She works in town, she lives in Blackrock, she walks to the dart station. She gets the dart into town, she's standing on the dart. All of a sudden, she's into town, she walks, 20 minutes to her office. She's walking around the office, up and down a few stairs, She does the same coming home. She does that 5 days a week. COVID hits. Mary's sitting at home. Mary's not coming to the gym. Now we work from home. Mary's not doing all that walking. There's been significant health decline, both, physically, mentally, emotionally, all that type of stuff. But even like a lot of people putting on weight, they're like, I'm not even eating that much. I don't eat much. I'm eating the exact same amount. But when we look at their activity level, it's just gone straight in, straight down. So it's something that for some people, it's no issue. For other people, like when I look at my watch some days, I haven't got it on now, but when I look at my watch, some days I have 3,000 steps. That's it. Because I get in the car, drive to the gym, I'm here for a little bit, I'm not doing as much coaching, do whatever I'm doing, back into the car, drive home, and it could be like 8 o'clock at night. It's like, I'm not going out for a walk then. Or I don't really go for walks, so I should do it more, but like I'm doing other stuff. But yeah, I'm lifting and I'm running, but when it comes to just the step piece, it's like one day I have 30,000 steps and the rest of the week I have 2,000. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, whoa, I need to look at that, all right? So the idea of how much, there was this study done, okay? And they had 750,000 veterans in America, aged between 30 and 90, both men and women. And basically you'll see this axis here is the hazard ratio or the mortality risk. So like the risk of dying at any point in time during or after the study was done. And then we've got fitness level in terms of cardiorespiratory fitness across the bottom. So what I want you to notice is the fittest people were less likely to die, and the most unfit people, so lowest quartile of fitness, were the most likely to die by nearly 4 times as much, or 3.5 times more likely to die from any cause, all right? So it's like, you don't have to be a super athlete, but going from the lowest level of fitness, which is nobody in here and nobody in the gym, to moderately fit, it's like, holy shit, there's a huge increase. So sometimes when you're looking at these things, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, well, I haven't got, like even a small increase in physical activity has huge carryovers. And then generally what happens is, the more fitness you're trying to accumulate, you have to put in more and more time for less and less reward. That's where for most people, 3 days a week and do, a 20-minute walk every day, that's probably solid. Like that is an amazing place to be. For some people, they're doing more than that. But like if everybody was to do that 3 days a week and a few walks, golden, you're done. All right? Any questions on that one, guys? No? No? So basically, more fitness, better things happen. So then we look at VO2 max, and we've touched about on this before. So your VO2 max is the amount of oxygen a person can use during intense exercise. So the higher the VO2 max, basically the better. The fitter somebody is, the more oxygen they can consume, the more energy they can expel, all right? So if anybody was thinking about this and trying to test it, your VO2 max is a nice thing to look at because it gives you in black and white. It's not like, oh, the lads down the gym are, exaggerating, or you don't have to be that strong, you don't have to be that fit. This is your own readings based on everybody else that's ever been tested, which is millions of people. So it gives you a really good point on where you're at. This kind of graph here, kind of again, this was some research, and it just shows the green line is the fittest people, okay? So the highest level of fitness. The black line is kind of the average level of fitness, and then the red line is the lowest level of fitness of these people that were back in this study. And what they've done with these people is like they measured it over a lifetime or over, extended it on out. And if you'd see somebody who's 25 and has a VO2 max of about 60, okay? That means like, hey, listen, you can run 10 miles an hour, blah, 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 right? So you're motoring along, running at that speed. But as they age, this VO2 max is going to decline to the point maybe where it's like they're 75 and walking up a stairs is somewhat challenging, but they can do it. But you look at this same 25-year-old with a low VO2 max, they're not going to be able to walk up a stairs. They're not even going to be able to walk up a slight incline. Not they don't want to do it, they can't physically do it. Does that make sense? So again, going back to that analogy or what I said earlier about somebody coming in and being on the bike for 60 seconds, if I said to that person, your life depends on it, you have to stay on that bike for 5 minutes at that speed, their body wouldn't have been able to do it, okay? So again, the point I'm trying to get at here, no matter where you're starting from, or no matter where we are age-wise, the more fitness that we can develop, the better it's going to be in the long run. So we'll touch on this in a second because we're going to come back into this. But you see, this is my report from the VO2 max. The only reason I put this here is because it says I'm superior. And I just wanted to tell everybody, Eilish, I'm a superior man. I've been telling you that for years. And now I've got the science. No, what I want to actually look at is this idea here, okay? So it's going to show my different zones. So sometimes when we're in the gym, and this is where it starts to come back into the gym and what we're doing here. A lot of people, they're not going to be they might turn around and say to you, Jesus, sure, I'm walking, if they're not doing any gym work of any description, not our gym, no gym work at all. And they go, sure, I'm fit, I walk. But for a lot of people, like walking is going to be down here, all right? So it's not improving their fitness per se, because it's not taxing their heart and their lungs to any great extent. So for me, my kind of recovery or low zone is 75 to 150 beats per minute, all right? Then as I move into like your zone 2, it's 150 to 170. So a lot of people say zone 2 is easy. If you seen me on the bike doing 150, my heart rate is 150 beats, I'd be sweating buckets. And you wouldn't like, for 5 minutes it'd be easy, but if I had to do that for an hour, you'd be like, Jesus Christ, he's working hard. But I'm not working as hard as up here. Does that make sense? So when people say zone 2 is easy or we need a lot of easy work, it's easy in relation to your maximal effort, but it's not easy in terms of doing it. Does that make sense to people? Yeah. The problem, I suppose, for a lot of clients would be if we might be trying to get them to do zone 2 or even some intervals, they're probably really down here. So the benefit that they're going to extract from it is going to be less. Now you got to moderate that with how hard does somebody want to push themselves. So again, where we started this conversation is what does somebody want? So I'd be reluctant to tell somebody you have to do this. But if somebody's investing the time in, they're like, sure, I'm going to the gym 3 days a week, but they're not doing a huge amount from an effort perspective while they're there, the result they're going to get back is going to be lower. Now again, you have to say, what am I optimizing for? Some people just want to come in and be in the environment, do a little bit, and they feel great. That's okay. But if you were coming, I would say, hey, listen, just push yourself that little bit more. Because remember the chart where it was like the lowest level of fitness, even getting to moderate, amazing things happen, okay? So the point here would be, if I was doing hard intervals, I would need to be at 182 beats per minute. So that's like, if you were to try to talk to me, I'd be just able to answer you like, yeah, I'd be just spitting words at you. Here, I'd be probably able to hold a broken conversation. And then here, I'd have a few words that I'd be able to kind of say, all right? So just this idea of VO2 max, I think we touched on that in terms of what it is, in terms of your METs, the amount of energy that we're using. We won't go through that. I'll just touch on this quickly. higher VO2 max, okay? So if you had a VO2 max of 10, it's equivalent to about 3 mets. So it's like slow walking. As your VO2 max goes higher, let's say 35, it's going to be jogging at about 6 miles per hour. So that's fairly fast. So the point I want to try and get across here is the bigger your VO2 max is, the more you can do with your body. Whether that's running, slacklining, doing the Camino, carrying Dave's bag because he wasn't doing any of his training in elite, whatever the case may be, all right? I won't, we have some bad news again. Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. So back into the cardio, right? So now we're, again, thinking about our heart and our lungs, all right? So we kind of touched on the fall piece of the puzzle. So cardiovascular disease is the biggest global killer, right? So nearly 18 million people per year are dying from some form of cardiovascular disease. So heart disease, the number one killer in everywhere in the Western world. Number 2 is strokes. So we're always afraid of cancer. Cancer's going to get you, and of course that's bad. But your heart disease is way more important. And here's the thing: for most people, I'm not a doctor, right, so don't quote me on this, but a lot of cancers, there's probably not a huge amount you can do about it. I know health is there, but like, if your mother or father had cancer and you have it and their parents had it, it might kind of come your way, right? But cardiovascular disease, in terms of exercise and nutrition, you can have a huge impact on it. So about 80% of cardiovascular deaths occur in people over 65, all right? Impacts of cardiovascular disease. So people with optimal heart health live 14 years longer. So that's a big one, right? That idea of, listen, do you want to get more living out of life? 14 years longer for doing a few walks and pushing yourself on the bike once a week. It's like, it's a small investment of energy when you think about it for a huge reward. And the other thing is, I'm assuming that those 14 years are 14 good years, not 14 years where you're hooked up to a machine and you're looking out a window somewhere. Do you know what I mean? When we look at heart disease and life expectancy, so after a heart attack, life expectancy decreases by an average of 8 to 12 years. 1 in 5 heart attack survivors will have another heart attack within 5 years, and 50% of heart failure patients die within 5 years of the diagnosis. So again, the most important thing I think to take away from this is, it's like, Jesus, I'm like the bleeding bear of bad news here. What was I must have been having a fight with Eilish when I was making these slides. When we're looking at it, right, like diabetes, again, is hugely related to our nutrition. It's hugely related to exercise, both resistance training and cardio. Obesity is going to be another one. So like, if we're carrying more weight, it's going to have a significant impact. But okay, somebody dropping or losing 5 to 10% of their body weight can reduce the risk significantly. So like 5%, if I'm 100 kilos, all right, I'm close enough to that now. So like 5 kilos, I could lose that in a month. Easy peasy, right? And it would significantly impact that. So it's not like somebody has to lose 20 or 30 kilos. Even a small amount can have a significant impact. Does that make sense? So again, I think that the real drive home and the takeaway message here is like, a lot of people, they have in their mind, I'm not a gym bunny. When I get them on the phone, they say to me, I'm not a gym bunny. You don't have to be a gym bunny. Even a small increase in these things can have a significant impact. When we're looking at them preventing and increasing life expectancy, so going back to the World Health Organization, 30 minutes a day of like as simple as a walk can reduce or lower the heart disease risk by 35%. So just walking 35 minutes a day. If you add, you're sleeping 6 hours, you're going to increase your heart disease, or if you're out sleeping less than 6 hours, you're going to increase your heart disease risk by nearly 50%. So listen, get your 7 hours, 8 hours. Most people will need that. Some people don't need so much, but most people, they're like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I have no energy and I'm always eating crap. What time do you go to bed at? 1 o'clock in the morning. Holy shit. Well, what were you doing? I don't know, just watching telly. Maybe go to bed earlier. All right, it'll have a big impact. And then stress management. So this is going to get, I just want you kind of thinking on this, and this might be a little bit too much for the purposes of this presentation. But when we're looking at the heart, what we're going to do is we have the blood, or the blue is blood coming in from your muscles, so blood coming in from your body. So we're going to have blood coming in from your lower body, blood coming in from your upper body. When we say blood coming in, it's coming back from your muscles. So this blood is deoxygenated. It's got to get pumped down into your right ventricle, from your right ventricle, back up into your lungs. In your lungs, the blood gives over carbon dioxide, takes in oxygen. It comes back in through your pulmonary vein, back down into your left ventricle, and then pumped out to the rest of your body. And then that cycle goes again, goes again, goes again in order to produce activity, all right? So when we're thinking about training, your heart is, what type of organ is it? Yeah, it's a muscle. So like we know if we lift weights, our muscles get stronger, maybe even get bigger. The exact same thing is happening with your heart. When you stress the heart in many different ways, I'm walking, I'm running, I'm sprinting, even if it's sprinting on a bike, pushing the sled up and down where you're like, you're forcing the heart to pump more blood around and all the good kind of stuff that's happening along with that. So we have what are known as, and I won't go through all these, right? I'll kind of skip it, but you have what are known as central adaptations. So these are adaptations at your heart. And then you have what are known as peripheral adaptations. And your peripheral adaptations are going to happen at the level of the muscles. Okay? So I think that's enough to kind of understand there that throughout the whole body, good things are happening when we're doing cardio. All right? We have this idea here of cardiac output. So cardiac output is the total volume of blood pumped per minute. So do you think if your body was able to pump more blood per minute, there would be a benefit there? Yeah, so it's like if you had an engine in the car and more fuel was being pumped into the engine, that engine is probably going to turn over faster. The car is going to go faster, right? So cardiac output, the more blood can get pushed out. Now, what increases cardiac output is going to be an increase in stroke volume, an increase in heart rate, or an increase in both. So when we say heart rate, that's how many times your heart can beat per minute. So look at, as we age, that drops down a little bit. So a younger heart is going to be able to pump more than an older heart. So I remember, younger, and you'd be on a machine and you'd grab onto the handle and it's like, 220 beats. Now, if you went back to my VO2 max, the max my heart rate went was 185. Does that make sense? So I've lost capacity there in how many beats my heart can be in any 1 minute. But I'm still relatively fit because the left ventricle has probably got a bit bigger and the actual muscles of the heart can squeeze harder and pull in and out more blood. So when we look at your stroke volume, so the second thing there is stroke volume. Stroke volume is the blood ejected per beat. So how much blood is pushed out of your left ventricle every time it beats. So if you were to imagine I had a balloon and I filled that balloon full of water or blood, and then my hands now are the muscles of the heart. If I squeeze that balloon lightly, what will happen to the blood? It's going to come out, isn't it? If I was able to squeeze it much harder, what would happen to the blood? It would go faster, more blood would go out. So that's the idea of stroke volume, okay? So what's going to happen there is as your heart gets stronger, the actual walls of the heart will get slightly thicker. And because it's slightly thicker muscle, it can beat harder and push more blood out on every single stroke. So even as our heart can't beat as many beats per minute, our stroke volume could still go up because we can build strength there. Does that make sense? So we can still be getting fitter at any age, all right? And basically, higher stroke volume means better endurance and better cardiovascular efficiency. I think, look, we touched on that idea of stroke volume. It's like blood is pulled in. There's a certain amount of blood within here. As it beats, the blood is pushed out, okay? I just want to, like, when I'm looking here, again, this goes back to this idea of peripheral adaptations and central adaptations. When we're doing any form of exercise, but endurance exercise as well, you're going to have cognitive benefits in terms of our brain. You're going to have benefits in terms of your heart, and you're going to have benefits in terms of your muscle. So good stuff is happening the whole time here, okay? In terms of your heart, it's like, look at, when we look at Alzheimer's and these type of things, it's like a lot of it, again, can come down to a use. If somebody's not using their brain, well, then the brain starts to lose capacities. But if we're using our brain to do activities, our brain then, this is what the brain wants. And research would show that dancing is actually one of the best things for your brain health, because there's a physical component, there's a component where you don't know what's happening next, there's music involved in it, there's rhythm involved in it. So there's lots of amazing things happening all at the same time in terms of coordination and things like that. Unfortunately, I'm crap at dancing, so I'm not going to be doing any of that.
I was just thinking Friday nights could be something different.
Friday night could be dance class. There we go. Get the tunes on.
The tunes on Friday.
Tunes on Friday. So to kind of bring all this together now, I'm nearly there at the end because I know it's like, woof, there's a lot going on here, right? But to bring all this back together, the way I would look at it is this, right? We've got 3 zones that we live in terms of the real world, all right, when we're talking about this. We've got zone 1. So zone 1, we're just plodding about, we're, just going about your day-to-day life. That's where your steps come into account. Again, with all levels of fitness, within reason, the more of you do, the better. All right, so we think the steps. Does anybody know where this whole 10,000 steps comes from? All right, so back in 1960, I think the Olympics was in Japan. This dude, this inventor had a pedometer and he wanted to sell loads of these pedometers. So he came up with this slogan, 10,000 steps to health, blah, blah, blah. And all these people started, 10,000 steps, get the pedometer on you. And that's where it started from. So there was no research to say anything about steps going back then. It was just, he made it up, bloody marketers. So it was just 100% made up. But now, look at whatever, 50, 60 years on, there's been more research done. And again, there's one of these linear graphs. The more steps somebody does, the more health that person has, within reason, okay? So we want to be looking and saying, right, from a day-to-day perspective, how much of this is happening? If you work on a building site, if you are, I don't know, you're outside and you're walking up and down, you don't have to worry about that. But if you have a desk job, this is definitely going to be something significant. If anybody's thinking about, I wanted to tone up or lose a little bit of weight, this is going to be significant. It's going to be really important. How many calories are you just expending day to day? Then we move into zone 2. So zone 2, I'd say, is your work zone. I'm working here now. That could be, I'm out digging the garden, I'm pulling weeds, I'm putting stuff in a wheelbarrow, filling up a watering can. That could be, putting boxes up on a shelf. That could be in the gym. All right, that's zone 2. We could have a chat, but you're lightly sweating. I mean, you're under a bit of load there. And then zone 5, it's like, listen, this is your heart is going maximum here. You've been chased by a bear. It doesn't matter how fast you are. It only matters that you're faster than the lad beside you. Okay? Ruff! I'd kick his ankles. You! All right? So again, thinking about but ideally we'd have a spread throughout our week between all of these things. And if you were thinking what ratio, 80% easy, 20% hard. So that might look like I'm walking 20, 30 minutes a day, excellent. I'm in the gym twice a week, doing 15 to 20 minutes minimum in this area. And once a week in the gym, I put my head down, earphones in, Rocky, and you're really trying to go for it. And that's going to be different to different people, all right? But you are trying to shift gears and you are trying to move as hard and as fast as possible in a safe manner. For some people, that could be running, it could be rowing, it could be on the skier. Probably the easiest thing to do is the bike. Your heart doesn't know whether you're running or rowing or skiing. So we have to say, what's the safest mechanism for each person to do that? If you've any injuries, if you've only been in the gym a wet day, we're not going to do that. But if you've been training a while, that is definitely going to be something that would benefit you. As I said earlier, if it was like, I do not like the feeling of that, I just don't like that feeling, then spend more time in the other areas and you'll still get lap over. There is no, in the human body, there's no stop and start other than probably death. It's like everything else is kind of layered into each other. It's like a bit of this is happening, then this next thing starts to happen. All right? Just wanted to show you that again. So if we were thinking then about training and about cardiovascular training, we have about 2 slides left. We have some form of high intensity interval training. So people will see stuff like this on the bike, sprints. So 30 second sprint at 90% of your max heart rate. If you don't know what 90% of your max heart rate is, it doesn't matter. It's like 9 out of 10 effort. So if you're having a chat with Mary behind you or beside you, it's not 9 out of 10 effort, all right? It's like, I'm trying to go here. And then we might rest for a minute and you might do that 10 times. So in terms of what's happening here, it increases the heart's efficiency in your cardiac output, improves oxygen delivery and utilization, it boosts VO2 max. So there's a benefit to that type of training. When we look at our zone 2, this could be a brisk walk, it could be a cycle, it could be a jog. Do you know, for most people, ideally, they might do that outside of the gym, you know, if possible, or they might turn around and go, do you know what, I do have an extra 40 minutes and I'm going to come into the gym and do one of the fit classes, or I'm going to come into the gym and jump on the bike and nail that, or get a bike at home. Hopefully it doesn't end up being a clothes horse. All right. Increases your stroke volume, enhances mitochondrial efficiency. So again, mitochondria is what makes your energy within the cell, and improves fat oxidation. So the utilization of fat as energy, okay? And again, most people go, oh, that's pretty important to me. Then we might have some form of threshold training. Again, we probably won't do as much of that in the gym, all right? But it could be, if the guys in the run club, it might be go out and say, hey, you're gonna run or bike or row for 20 minutes at a hard pace. And that's the type of stuff that people won't want to do. Because like, you want me to push hard for 20 minutes? Yeah. Oh, that's so hard. All right. People's perception of what hard is and what real hard is like, can be a little misskewed, okay? And then obviously your strength training, which we all know and love, improves heart contractibility and blood pressure regulation, enhances oxygen utilization within the muscles, and then supports endurance, obviously, in terms of injury mitigation. So if you were thinking about, right, how can the gym help with this? We've got many different options. Going back to the idea of, if you know what you want, you can talk to us as the coaching team and say, I want more of this thing, and then the program can reflect that. If you were thinking about the zone 1 type stuff, March for May is coming up. So it's like, hey, listen, measure your steps, right? March for March. Yeah, it was March for May, I think, the last time. So March for March, you're looking at me going, what is he talking about? Measure our steps. Now again, whether somebody does, like, it's not about the mad people who are out doing 30,000 steps every day. Just leave them at it, all right? That's not about that. It's about, I do 6,000 steps a day and I'm gonna make a concerted effort to do 7. Check. You have improved your health and fitness. It's not about being in the 90%, it's moderately more. So going from 6,000 to 7,000, amazing. 7,000 to 8,000, really good. 8,000 to 9,000, you're getting less benefits. 15,000, less benefits. Does that make sense? Still benefits, but less. Then we might turn around and go, right, we're moving into the zone 2. So you see this person here, 40 minutes continuous at moderate pace, row work. Oh, look, I used the bike and I did 30 minutes. Amazing, all right? Over here, we might have where we're going kind of, it's not really all out hard, but it's getting harder. It might be conditioning at the end of somebody workout. So it's like 4 minutes, easy, 4 minutes, max effort, twice, all right? So you're approaching that maximal heart rate type stuff. But if this says max and you're having to chat for 4 minutes, you're nowhere near max. Does that make sense? So it's still getting great benefits, but that you're leaving a little bit in the tank, okay? And then it could be something like this, might be 45 seconds easy, 15 seconds max, 10 times, where you are really trying to go all out, or any iteration of all those numbers. So this feels significant. What should I do is the questions. So guys, over to you. What questions, if any, have you got? And again, where we started this was, I suppose, for me, I wanted people to maybe think about these things and then think about, right, do I want to change my training anyway? Am I happy where my training is? More information, I think, or more knowledge is going to help you make more informed decisions, I think, is what we wanted from this. And then you can implement those decisions moving forward.
Yeah.
What time are we at?
47.
Oh, good stuff. All right.
Take you in there, I think.
There is a lot there, yeah? There's a huge amount.
Just like that decade and like just, I suppose, thinking now, looking ahead as well.
Yeah.
Or even the next 3 or 4, you'd like to get to your
Yeah.
end of your this decade, I suppose, where,
Yeah.
break it down.
Yeah, and again, if the thing to say is, because look, everything we take for granted, right? Like that's just natural as a human. We take everything for granted until you can't do it anymore. So as I said, getting up and down off the ground, like as a child, you just jump up and down. Now I'm getting off the ground and it's like, oh, a few little noises are starting to happen. Some people are in the gym and if I ask them to get on the ground, they wouldn't be able to get off the ground. Like that's like, whew, that's significant then. Now if you add a fall on top of that, so it's like, it might be, I want to be able to continue to be able to get off the ground forever. All right, and going back to, again, that slide of like, you kind of say, yeah, but we're old and this happens to you. No, if you went to like India or something, people are sitting on the ground and they're getting up and down, and then one day they just pass away.
At the same time, we're all going to experience wear and tear.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's to take that in, and it's like that's all normal, but we can mitigate against a lot of that as well. And like, if you had a car and you wanted to have less wear and tear, what would we do? Servicing it and making sure the tire, get a new car. Yeah. Do you know what? If we can hold on for long enough, we might be able to get stem cells or something like that. It's like that gym shit is, you don't need to do any of that. but it goes back to, if we say getting up and down off the ground, okay? So if you were to start to deconstruct that, well, you know, I need mobility in my hips because if I'm on the ground, I need to be able to get my leg to here. All right? Okay. If I'm going to lift myself up from here without holding on to anything, I need to be able to do a split squat. So if I want to be able to do a split squat at 80, well, I've got to be able to do at 70, maybe 10 split squats with my body weight. 60, 10 split squats with 2 10s in my hand. 50, 10 split squats with maybe 2 15s. And I'm just picking numbers out of the air there. Yeah. What is that? Yeah. You know, I'm just pulling numbers out there, but you know, you could kind of start to pull it back there. Do you know what I mean? But like I was slagging the lads off in here the other day. These lads are like in their 20s and they were out there split squatting 10s. I'm like, oh, fuck's sake, lads. The girls were lifting more than them. Now I couldn't let that happen. I was just like, I'd rather die. But it's like they're just not pushing themselves. You know what I mean? So it could be as simple as that. And then, you know, getting up and down is going to be, what's the mobility in my hips? Because when I said about this get up test, it's going to come down. It's like, oh, do you know what? My hip mobility is crappy at the minute, so I can't get my legs in underneath me, right? So I'm struggling to bring my feet towards my body. So now my feet are in front of my body as opposed to underneath my body. Because if you were to go down and say, right, what's Jay's internal rotation in his hip? It's maybe 30 degrees. It should be there. It's like, so I'm missing. So I've not got a strength deficit. I've got a mobility deficit. So if I don't do anything with that, I can't get off the ground. Yeah, they're tight. No, can't do it.
There you go.
No, I use my knee. You have to come straight up. But see, so if I'm assessing myself, it's like, I don't need to be fitter. I don't need to be stronger. I need more mobility. So if I was coming to this gym, I wouldn't be out there lifting 5 days a week. I'd be like, do you know what? I need to go to them mobility sessions and I need to do my cars at home. And I haven't been doing them. So, and the reason why I haven't done it is because the pain of not doing it is not significant enough. Do you know what I mean? But if I keep not doing that, my feet will be out further and further and further and further and further. And then it's like, oh, it's too late now. I'm not going to get that back. I've missed the boat. So after this, yeah. But it's like everything goes back to your wear and tear point. At a point in time, if you've let it wear down too much, like I'd say to Eilish, like, will you fucking go and get them bleeding tyres changed? Rallying around corners. It's like the tyre's gone now. We're not repairing that. It's gone. And this is where a knee replacement, the hip replacement comes in. If we had have got it earlier on, we could have extended the usage in that hip or maybe never got it in the first place.
Sorry, very quickly. Do you remember the study that you read about the runners and that bone density? Do you happen to remember?
I'll send you the podcast, yeah.
Please, that'd be fab.
And then you can have a look back at it.
Yeah.
So again, it's just thinking, what do we want? And then being able to sit down. This is where we can come in as the coaching team. I don't know what you want. And I shouldn't tell you what you want. But if you tell me what you want, I know what you need to do now. That's the value that we can place and then put the structure around it. Do you know that way? And again, I'm always trying to ask within the coaching team, go back to that general and specific, what do most people need? That's why we have mobility classes, conditioning classes, and encourage people to lift. Because if most people done that, like if everybody done, you know, 1 mobility, 1 conditioning and 2 lifting, your World Health Organization is boxed off. Then if you turned around and said, all right, my hips are at me, and we put a little bit more focus into that, and now your hip won't be at you, well, you know what I mean? Now you're making it more personalised to you as the individual, what you need and what you want, you know?
You said about the strength reducing every decade 3 to 10%. Is there any statistic on mobility as to what that?
It's probably going to be the same. So what happens, the first thing to go is power.
Yeah.
So power reduces the fastest. After power comes strength and muscle size kind of together, because those 2 things are very closely linked. A bigger muscle is a stronger muscle. And again, we're not talking bodybuilders here, just in general. And then after that, it'd be probably your joint health and things like that, you know?
Yeah.
Can you do too much zone 5 training? As in, like, obviously, like, putting your hard on them?
Yeah, so the thing there would be, it's like everything has a cost-benefit ratio. So when you do zone 5, it's very hard to recover from. So the cost benefit there might start to taper off if you're doing too much of it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's not necessarily that the training might be the problem. It's like you can't recover from that training, or it takes away from other things. Because if I said, like, I'll give you €100 to invest in your health every week, and each thing you do, you have to give me some of the money for it. If you put all of that into your zone 5, well, you've nothing left for the other areas. So that's probably the easiest way to think about that, you know? So listen, on a positive note, it stopped raining. I'm going to Windy Ridge to buy myself something now. I feel depressed after that. All right, any other questions, guys? About your own training, you know, where to maybe invest some of your time in terms of training. Is there?
It's reflective. I definitely need to look at my own training and be like, especially around that kind of decades, because I think I struggle with looking for, like, I really enjoyed the process, but I think working backwards works best for me. So I think that's a really valuable thing that I'm going to take into.
Happy days.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything from you, Chris?
No,
No.
I don't think so. It's just I'll have to work harder to make sure.
No, look, the
Make
thing
sure
is,
I don't die.
yeah, I don't want to die. Look, the thing is that, like, don't take that as a scale. Look, most people here are doing amazing, like, you know, flying. It's just the idea of if you knew what you wanted, and there's all stuff. So I've just shown there. Look, I know that my hip mobility's got worse over the last while because I'm doing more and more running and less mobility. So I'm putting all my investment into running and and not any of the investment into maintenance of my hip health. So my hip health is deteriorating. And since I moved to Wicklow, I'm driving probably 8 hours a week, where I used to cycle to work. So I've added 8 hours of sitting in a crappy position to my week. So let's say if you think positive, negative, that's 8 hours negatives. So in order for me to remedy that, I probably need to do, I don't know, a half an hour of mobility, which I haven't been doing. So this, and then that ties back to the whole thing of, like, people that used to work in town and now they don't. They've taken that positive thing out, which was the walking, and they've added in a negative, which was sitting in their kitchen beside the press. And the press is going, come and look at me, come and look at me. And then you get a biscuit and it's like, have another biscuit. Oh, Jesus, 10 biscuits later. Do you know?
But, like, it's like that even I work in an office, so, like, you're sitting on your, like, literally 7, 8 hours, like, you might get up for lunch, but it's just trying to understand how, like, that's 8 hours out of your day, that's 8 hours of sleep, so you're limited then to your, get up early and go gym.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is to try and blend in, like, just blend more stuff into your normal day. So it's like, I know it sounds so simple, but it's like park a little bit further away, use the stairs. Where can I squeeze in? And again, it doesn't have to be go to the gym. Going to the gym is the most unnatural thing a human could do. You think it's very natural, but it's like that, like, in the real world, like, me and Chris are out hunting, and then we see something right, I'm gonna throw a stone at it, oosh, hit it in the head, I'll run over and grab it, and then we carry it back. Do you know what I mean? Kate, here, Kate, cook that up for us, will you? And then we're not out jogging like for fun. It's like I'm just gonna chase something till I kill it, eat it. That was kind of, so it was little bursts of activity, but maybe 20 bursts throughout the day, every day. Now we come into the gym, we think we're gonna do all of it in 1 hour. It works for our schedule, but biologically it's probably not the best thing to do.
I think our ancestors are cracking up laughing.
Probably are, yeah, big time.
But my grandmother was like in her 90s, she died, but like up until a year before.
You've got good genes then, you're laughing. Don't you? You don't need to do anything.
Farm,
Yeah.
Like literally every day, she said up and
Yeah.
down, walking, carrying buckets, the whole kit and
Yeah.
caboodle, and that was just her life.
Yeah.
Whereas now,
Well, see, a lot of the people in the gym, you know, and have a similar story. It's like, oh, you know, especially if they're from the country more so maybe. It's like, oh, my dad cycles and he goes up the mountains and he's just living.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, that his just day. Look, I often think about that, and I might have said this to you, Chris. We're walking around Wicklow or something like that, right? And you're thinking, Jesus, this is some walk, and you're carrying a bit of a backpack, and then you see a little like type of hut thing or a house. Somebody lived there, right? And to eat food, they had to like walk 20 miles to the next village with a bag of potatoes on their back. That was just Monday morning. That wasn't them going to do a big workout and putting it on Instagram. That was just Monday. Do you know what I mean? It's like they had to do that just to be alive. So it's like, it's a different kettle of fish. So unfortunately, this is the way exercise is now, in the sense that we have to squeeze it into a set amount of time because we've only got so much time. But the best thing you could do is see where else can I squeeze in more activity, more movement, on top of what you're already doing. Because if you ever leave the gym, you know what's going to happen. I'm only joking. You'll be in all sorts of trouble. Anything else, guys?
No, it's very good, thank you.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about there.